There's a moment when you realize the way we hire, the CVs, the bias, the buzzwords isn't just outdated, it's actively working against us.
That's anti-discovery, and you're actually incentivized to lie. You're incentivized to game the system. The best decision I made to join and the best decision I made to leave at the time that I did, because
Why do you want to kill the CV? Like that's, that isn't that the thing that lets you get ahead?
the skill on the resume and the CV is just the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg that needs to be.
Hey everyone, welcome to What the FTE, the podcast for HR leaders who are done playing defense and ready to shape the future of work. There's a moment when you realize the way we hire, the CVs, the bias, the buzzwords isn't just outdated, it's actively working against us. Today, I'm talking to the legend, a former Australian Army captain turned HR revolutionary. He's on a mission to kill the resume, build teams like product designers, and bring military-grade clarity to how we uncover real talent. Josh, you are the most badass person I have interviewed to date. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. And wow, badass, and legendary, a very strong word. So we're gonna live up to those.
You got to go with the big claims, right? That's what it's all about. I gotta ask, like, birth till now, like, how do you go from like military to HR? Like, what's your story?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? So growing up, I had this weird fascination with military stuff, to the concern of my mother and father, for sure, because they were like, why is this kid obsessed with drawing army men everywhere and running around pretending to be in the army? And so they thought it was a phase. Turns out it didn't really end. So when I was 18, I joined the military and went through I think it's, I don't know what it's called in Canada, but in the US, it's like the West Point equivalent, like the officer academy. Went through that for a few years, studied business, went and served in the infantry. And I was in the military for like 10 years and great experience. I often say it was the best decision I made to join and the best decision I made to leave at the time that I did, because it was just same people, same problems. The growth trajectory was not very interesting for me, and it was very, very bureaucratic, very controlled, constrained kind of organization. As you can imagine, it has to be. But I was craving something much more creative and innovative. And I was listening to a podcast for a digital marketing agency at the time and dabbling with some e-commerce stuff. So just experimenting with some other interests. And this job opportunity came around and I took it, got the job, started working for a US company, have been there ever since, and have found my way up into the HR function, leading, the people, the culture aspects of that company now for a few years. And recently, in the last 6 months, have founded a company called Superhired that is aiming to tackle some of the challenges that we all are definitely seeing when it comes to recruitment at the moment, and really challenging the status quo of quite a number of things when it comes to work and how HR teams govern and see themselves and add value, but definitely focused around recruitment and hiring right now. And that path from military to here feels natural because it's still involved with people. It's still very much involved with leadership and culture. And those are the things that I guess I got really exposed to in the military, that I bring forth into all that I do today. So,
Well, it must be a big change because you go from the military where, when you're talking about people management, you're talking about having hard conversations and leadership, except the people that you're leading and having these hard conversations with are highly trained and heavily armed. So it's like your day-to-day must be like, low consequence in relatively speaking.
well, I think something that I've learned is that at the end of the day, all humans are the same, right? It doesn't matter if they're wearing a spacesuit or a military uniform, or they're a tradesperson, or they own their own business, or they're an office worker. Like, at the end of the day, people have a set of drivers and needs. They're all looking for a certain set of things in their work and what they do. And conversations I've had with soldiers, the stakes can be different depending on the circumstance, of course. But at the end of the day, you peel back the layers and we're all inherently emotional. We're all inherently governed by the same insecurities and the same needs, right? Like a soldier in the infantry stationed in a city across Australia is still trying to provide for their family. They're still concerned about the economy. They're still frustrated with the price of living and the cost of housing. And they're just, everyone is fighting the same relative battle. At the end of the day, when it comes to organizations, it's really, I think, the same narrative and the same challenges that we need to be dealing with at its core.
I mean, boil it all down. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And so, I mean, why do you want to kill the CV? Like that's, that isn't that the thing that lets you get ahead?
Yeah. So I think a bit of context with that, like the resume and the CV, if you think about this artifact and what it aims to serve, it was developed. I actually found this out recently. It was developed in like the 15th century. I think Leonardo da Vinci has the claim to fame for the resume randomly, which is super weird and interesting, but it's like a middle-aged document. This thing has been around for hundreds of years. And yes, it's evolved. However, it still exists in a form that underserves its purpose. What I mean by that is when we make recruiting and hiring decisions, if we're trying to boil down a human's capabilities and potential to a one-sheet piece of paper that lacks context, that lacks so much nuance, and making fundamental decisions about whether they would be able to provide a capability in a company, and also dictate as well decisions that impact not only the people in the company, but the trajectory of the company and the candidate's life as well that you're playing with here. It's a human at the end of the day on the other end. It's vastly underserves the purpose of what recruitment should be, which is ultimately matchmaking as an activity. It's getting the right person, understanding them, not just the skills and the experience at a surface level that's on their resume, but where and when and how did you apply those skills and experiences? Understanding what drives them at work. Those things I was talking about before, the emotional, social things of what we all want from work, depending on where you're at in your life. That's not on the resume. That's not on the CV. There's so many things that aren't captured. So when we talk about killing the CV in your resume, I would say it's killing it in its current form, and it's looking to challenge people to evolve the resume and the CV to its next evolution, its next stage of, yes, it's important to look at skills and experiences, and it's important to have a process where we can filter still, because hiring is still a funnel, right? We can't get away from that. Candidates understand that. Companies understand that. We're still in this system where we need to funnel and find the best people, but we need to do it in a way that's just more accurate and that's more humane.
So what is the ideal way to do that? I wholeheartedly agree, but is there some other system or some other way that you think is going to change the game in a talent space?
Yes. And that's currently what I'm experimenting with in this space with Superhired. It's investigating ways in which we can balance the tensions that exist with recruitment. And when I say tensions that exist, on one end, you have the need for commerciality, resourcefulness, speed when you come to recruitment. You can't take that away, right? It's a business decision. You need to work and be able to hire in a way that makes sense for the business, cost-wise, time-wise. So that's a tension that exists. That just is, and it should be there. And on the other end, you've got this tension around making sure that you're matchmaking correctly and you're finding the right person for the role. You're treating candidates with a measure of human decency and respect, facilitating that discovery, right, which leads to more information about context and about fit. So you've got these two kind of polarizing things, and the advocacy here is not to do one at the expense of the other. It's to find the balance based on the situation that you're in. There's no getting around the fact that sometimes you're just going to be caught in a situation as a business where you need to hire fast. That's fine. There's also things you can do to make sure that your hiring is less fragile and that you can operate in a way where you can project out further and be more proactive when it comes to your hiring, which allows you to do more of the discovery stuff, right? So a lot of the solutions in this space actually comes before you've even made the decision to hire. It's about building systems and processes in your business where there's less fragility when it comes to recruitment and you're less reactive. And when you can create a system where you've got a bit more time and you allow yourself to do the discovery and you're very clear as a business on what you want, what you need, then it gives you more time to do that discovery with candidates and to have that funnel still, but not make it so aggressive and so augmented with AI at the expense of the candidate experience and at the expense of really the discovery in the first place. So I see a lot of companies that place far too much emphasis on that end of the spectrum, which is about speed and time to fill and all these metrics that are agnostic of quality and long-term fit. And now we're seeing a lot of people adding AI on top of this situation with the advent of all these tools that is making the matter so bad that it's completely degrading the experience. It's actually pushing both of those polarized endpoints further and further away. And you've got candidates using AI to craft hundreds of resumes per day for hundreds of different roles, automated like this. And then you've got recruiters that are like, how do I deal with this onslaught of resumes? I need to then now look and leverage tools to help me process these things quicker. So you've got this situation where you've got essentially these AIs battling it out in this arena, which completely dilutes any sort of discovery and any sort of signal, because everyone's incentivized around the wrong metrics, and the game itself is a lose-lose, which is crazy.
That is absolutely wild. It really makes you think. I mean, I haven't had a job in a long time. Actually, since I was a delivery driver for the
right
for the wine company in Australia that has allowed me to map every beach on the East Coast. Thinking about, and I don't even think I gave a resume for that. It was, my friend's sister worked there and I got the job. But it's crazy to think now, if you were going to apply for jobs, you're just creating tailored resumes and tailored cover letters. See, you don't even get like a really good sample of somebody's writing or their personality. It's, you're basically just getting enhanced or diluted version of themselves that, whatever AI tool they're using comes in. And then on the other side, you're using AI to filter that out, or potentially AI to do interviews.
Oh, yeah, it gets worse. It just gets worse. It's all theater. That's what it's become. That's what it's becoming. It's becoming this theatrical play where both sides are incentivized to do the wrong thing. Like, if I was looking for a job now, I think a lot of candidates go through this experience, and I've got friends actually that have gone through this exact experience recently, where they start off strong. They're like, you know what? I'm going to write a really good resume. I'm going to apply for a few jobs that I really, really want. And I'm just going to really put time and attention into a CV and a resume, and I'm going to do it all up. Don't hear back at all. Nothing. Zero. Despite them being incredibly qualified for a lot of these roles that they're hiring for. They're filtered out in the first instance by a keyword tracker, some ATS, some system that has been trained to look for very specific, nuanced things, which are not necessarily indicative of performance or capability. When you're in that situation as a candidate, you lose hope. And then you eventually, your resilience degrades to the point where you're like, you know what, if you can't beat them, join them. I need to get on these tools and I need to just start pumping these things out. Boom, boom, boom. And that's the fact is that that's anti-discovery, and you're actually incentivized to lie. You're incentivized to game the system. And I'm actually seeing tools using the terminology, beat the system, game the system of hiring, like trying to sell their products and services to candidates. So when I saw that, I had to log off for the day and go hit a punching bag for a bit, because I was like, this is ridiculous. This needs to change. It's a failing system right now. And if there's one thing having a failing system, there's another thing when the impact of this not only affects the bottom line of companies, but it affects humans doing what they do for the majority of every day, which is having to show up to a workplace and work in an environment where they potentially shouldn't have been placed because they're an incorrect match or a poor match. It negatively impacts the lives of everyone in that workplace. And that person, would likely be a better match somewhere else. And I think that's really the core of it here. I'm not professing that, which a lot of people do, which I also have a problem with, that there are bad people or bad hires or, toxic. It's a matchmaking endeavor. One person that's not the right fit for company A is potentially a very good fit for company B, and vice versa. So that is really what the essence is of this discovery-led approach. It's slowing things down, getting exceptionally clear on what the company needs and its context, A lot of companies don't necessarily understand the context of the work product that they're selling and offering someone. And at the team level, the department level, depending how you're structured, the company level, you have all these different contexts that overlap each other, these dynamics at play. And every role in an organization has its specific demands for what that person is accountable for, the skills that need to be deployed. There's so much to unpack. And unless we understand that, we can't possibly know who the right fit is for that context. So agnostic of that discovery, we're just like, you know what, we'll just take anyone and everyone who's got this credential that's worked in a similar role here for that many years, just bring them in. And it's like, we're playing in this sandbox that is like 2 millimeters of sand, and we just need to completely change the arena.
Sometimes it's not even the credential too, it's the keyword. Certain's mission is, how do we make it so you don't need a resume because you have these credentials, these things that are constant, and then you can, those are things to prove that you did what you said you did, but you've got to go that layer deeper. I know it's funny, you're really poking a sore spot because today our ATS weeded out a candidate, or I found out that our ATS weeded out a candidate who turned out to be incredible just because there wasn't a specific keyword on their resume. And that to me is, if you get people down to keywords, it's challenging. You got to go deeper. It's what have they done? Can they show what they've done? Do you need to have a degree in business to be the best in business? I mean, some of the best business people I know don't have a degree in business. Some of them don't even have a high school diploma. And I mean, it's the same. It's the same across the board. Now, I don't want my accountant not to have a CPA, or my lawyer to not have a law degree, or my doctor not to be a doctor. But for the majority of jobs these days, it's not about your credentials, it's about your fit. And when you talk about teams, how many players in sports do we know that were all-stars on one team and then go to another team and totally suck? And so it's not about being good or bad, because you can be great when you're put in the right environments, and you can be terrible when you're not. And I know I've played on teams, I've been on teams where I felt like an all-star, and I go to the next team and I think I'm going to drag this team up. This team is going to go from, bottom of the league to the top because I'm here, because I'm number one. And you get there and your performance is just as bad as everybody else because the chemistry is not there. The fit, the role fit is not there. And so, you're totally right.
Context is really everything. And I know a lot of people, there are a lot of challenges to building an environment and a system that can do this level of discovery and have this level of time and attention that's devoted to a process that's doing this level of nuanced fact finding and developing this understanding around the company and the people that you're bringing in. And it's very, very institutionalized. The way we recruit and hire now is incredibly institutionalized, and it has been over decades and decades, ever since the Industrial Revolution, where the majority of jobs were do this, then that in a factory. That's when a resume is actually pretty useful, right? I've assembled these things before at this other factory. Okay, that's the same thing that you've assembled at that previous factory. You got a clean record. All right, I just need you to stand there, work 6 hours, and assemble that thing, right? There's no knowledge, creative deployment. It's very do this and that, very simple. Work now, a lot, like majority of the case, is not that. It's creative, it's knowledge, it's dynamic, it's fast moving. You have to be curious and creative and learning all the time. It's a different beast. And to your point, there are still credentials that are important when it comes to trades, artisans, like they did back in the day. You need to know how to deploy particular tools and skills. And I'm not professing at all that skills are not important or credentials are not important. They do glean very, very strong indicators and insights, but you just need to investigate them. Just because I deployed a suite of skills in a previous company, say I'm a software developer, for example, working at Software Inc., and I'm building a platform and it achieved some great results for the company and the products that we were building. If I interview you and I purely just look at that skill, that deployment, that product you built, and then say, okay, I think you can do the same thing here, let's hire you. You're not considering the context in which they deployed those skills, how they were supported, what processes and systems were they subject to, what leadership did they have, what was the working arrangement, where was the company stationed, what were the team members that you had around, like all of these things to unpack. The skill on the resume and the CV is just the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg that needs to be explored to understand how they achieved that impact and deployed that skill. And credentials as well. I honestly don't really pay much attention to credentials unless it's absolutely necessary for a role, because it doesn't tell me anything. I know firsthand because I did a master's in HR, and I can tell you, I did not pay much attention during that degree. I did the degree, I got good marks, right? But I was so busy with my other work because I was studying part-time. I didn't put anywhere near the amount of time and attention I wanted to do into that degree. But I still got the degree. If I was hiring simply off that measure, then it's misleading. And I think a lot of people put too much emphasis on the surface level things that they come across when looking at these documents.
You should give a pep talk to every startup founder about hiring someone based on credentials. I think we've all hired someone from FANG at the early stage of a company and watched them and the company struggle because, when you did the thing at like Google or Amazon, you had it was a very different world. When you actually have to do every component of it yourself, and no less impressive, but when you have to do every component of it yourself, that's different. When making a movie yourself is very different than a Hollywood production, right? Like
Right.
The director's not touching the camera; they're not the camera operator. When you're making a high school movie or a ski or snowboard video, like you have to do. You're editing, you're the camera person. Like it's a very different skill set. No more or less impressive, but like you need to have skills for the role. So this is actually kind of ties nicely into one of our listener questions, which is teams often overvalue impressive resumes over adaptability, growth mindset, and cultural fit. How do you balance proven experience versus raw potential in your hiring?
That's a great question. Recently, we started conducting this work drivers discovery exercise. I call it work drivers because it's something that's a bit radically different in terms of one of the initial steps we do to help us gather information about raw talent, I guess, and what lies at the heart of what someone truly wants at work. A work driver for me is split across different domains, 3 different domains that are based on jobs to be done theory. I'm not sure if you've heard of jobs to be done theory, but basically it's this theory from Clay Christensen, which is definitely worth looking into, that talks about how regardless of the work product or the service or any product, you hire it to do a job for you, right? A hammer. I don't hire a hammer for me to hit a nail in the wall. I hire it to hang a painting of my family, right? So when it comes to work, we hire our jobs to do things for us, right? Yes, money, obviously. We all hire our jobs to give us money because we live in a capitalist society. We live in a society. We need money. There are so many other things to explore when it comes to what we hire our jobs to do for us. And we developed this exercise where across social, emotional, and functional dimensions, we take someone through this exercise of self-discovery where they rank on a scale of 1 to 10, all these different measures of jobs to be done across those dimensions around what matters to them. So for example, for functional jobs to be done as a work driver for me, I would put maybe compensation and benefits as number 4. And then I would put an advancement path in my role as number 1, because I'm still relatively young. I don't have a family. I'm willing to put the drivers that are around intensity and work and risk taking and these things up at front. And you would see things around security and these other elements down the bottom. And when you start to uncover these hidden, very raw elements around what drives someone at work and what they hire their work to do for them, you can then start to have really interesting conversations initially when you're looking to hire people around what they're looking for in work as a work product and whether that translates to your company. So if you know that your company is extremely dynamic right now, it's going through a period of high change and transformation, it's messy, it's high stakes, high accountability, you're moving very quickly, there's lots of things going on, and and you can't afford benefits right now because you're a scale up and all of these things, and you've got someone saying, hey, I really value benefits, instability, then you're going to have a conversation saying, hey, look, like there's a mismatch here with fundamentally with what you want and what we can provide at the root level. I don't care what your resume and CV says. If we don't get these connections right, then it doesn't matter what skills you've deployed or even if this is the right context or company. Like there's going to be inherent disconnects with what you hire your job to do for you and what we can provide as a work product. So the tie into the question there is skills are important and you need to dig deeper and understand the context throughout hiring as to how those skills were deployed. And you should simulate those skills as realistically as possible. In the military, we would do training exercises where you would have fake explosions and even real rounds and ammunition, and you would get as close as possible to the real thing. Do that in hiring. Try to replicate the situation in the context. Again, see, context is like this. It's up the top of it's just one of the most important things to replicate. Have a process that replicates the context, that digs deeper in the skills. And then when it comes to the raw talent, you're digging deeper through things like that work drivers assessment and things like this to understand what's at the heart of the individual. Hopefully that answered the question.
It definitely did. And it's interesting because the way you're talking about it is, I mean, it resonates perfectly. You know, someone who has kind of always been part of the startup scene and always seen chaos. And then you bring other people into the company that are maybe not as risk tolerant or maybe are more concerned about, you know, fixed income versus, you know, variable and growth, or have less excited about change, you know, and might be more suited to a bigger company, but have seen, oh, you know, startups, you know, it's all over TV and it's like the fun thing to do. And, you know, it seems sexy when, like, you know, you get into a discovery process and you realize that looks cool, but it's actually not important to them. Like the work product that they're looking for is not actually the work product they're looking for actually doesn't match what they want.
Right. Exactly.
You know, everyone wants a sports car, and then you have kids or have to drive in the snow or there's a speed bump, and all of a sudden nobody wants that Ferrari anymore. You know, you want the Kia, right, or the whatever. You know,
because the jobs to be done have changed from what you need and from that vehicle, right? Like if you're driving a Ferrari, there are social, functional, emotional jobs to be done with a vehicle.
Yep.
Functionally, I need to get from A to B. Is a Ferrari facilitating a functional need from getting to A to B? Yeah, it is, but that's not primarily why I hire that car, because I could drive a little Kia hatchback to get me from A to B without having to spend $200,000, right? So really, the job to be done with a Ferrari is more around social dynamics and emotional dynamics. I want to feel a certain way when I get into this car. I want to be regarded as this or looked at as this, as status, prestige. People hire their jobs to do that for them as well. McKinsey, right? Or these big management consultancy firms or even FANG companies. People don't just hire those workplaces for the experience that they provide in terms of the work that they're doing. They hire them for the clout that they get on their resume. They hire those jobs for the speed, the intensity, the problems that they potentially provide them to tackle. Right? So, and all of those companies know it, right? All of those companies know what they provide and they don't shy away from it and they own it. Because if you know what you provide as a company, you know what work product you offer, then you can be very polarizing in how you sell and market that product of work and that experience. And then you can attract the right people in the first place. And that's a very important thing as well to keep in mind, is that if you are truly understanding of what you offer as a company when it comes to work, and I'm not just talking about some fancy, I know my employee value proposition. No, you know, like the experience in every facet, emotional, social, functional, every component of what it's like to work in your company, then you can push a lot of people away through the hiring process in a good way by saying, this is what we're about, man. Okay. If you don't fit this or you don't want this, don't even bother. And a lot of people will look at that and be like, oh, actually, yeah, I don't really want that. But the people that look at that and say, that's what I want, they're more inclined to do those discovery assessments, because that's a lot of pushback. It's like, oh, why would I want to sit down and do this card thing and do all this stuff and give my data? It's like, you would only want to do that if you truly believe from the outset that this is the right opportunity for you. How are you going to know if that's the right opportunity for you? By the company being sure of itself and being able to sell that opportunity and market it in a way that we do with regular products, by knowing your ICP.
It's amazing how often teams don't do that. I had a really interesting experience in university. I went to go play football for the university that I was going to go to. And on the first day, the coach laid out the expectations. And the coach said, you're joining this football team, and there's no drinking, no drugs, no intimate relationships. You are here to play football, and that is what you're here to do. So for football season, I don't want to see you at the bar. I don't want to see you on a date, and you're going to be here, every morning at whatever time, and you're going to do this thing. And oh, by the way, if you're first year, you're not going to see the field, and you're probably not ever going to dress this year. And I was like, I'm out. That's not what I want to do.
Yes.
And,
right. That's funny.
And then I went to the rugby team, and they're like, we're sponsored by a beer company. You have practice every day except for days that you don't have games. And, we expect you to drink after every game because we're sponsored by a beer company. And it was like, that was, I'm totally fine to work hard and show up every day. But, the culture behind rugby for me was always better. I wanted the jersey to play football, and I wanted to talk about playing football, but really the experience that I wanted, the job to be done, more the culture around the rugby club aligned better for me.
And that's a perfect analogy. And here's the tie-in to why context matters. If I'm looking at you on paper and I say, okay, he looks like a good fit for our rugby team because he's played rugby, let's get him in. And then you arrive and they're like, there's no alcohol, there's no going out, we're sponsored by, a water company or something, whatever, mineral water. You're like, I don't want to drink.
Something gross. Vegemite,
right? Veggie. Hey, I have to like Vegemite.
Exactly. Which might be a good team for you. Maybe not.
Yeah, that's right. You get all the free jars of Vegemite that you want, and you just you come in and you're, oh, this is another rugby team. They must be the same as the last one I was at. And we're like, oh, it's a rugby player. He's played rugby. He must like our culture and what we stand for and the fact that he has to forcibly eat Vegemite every day. And then you get in and you're like, this is shit, right? And it's because we didn't do that due diligence. We relied on the surface level indicators of fit, which is skills, credentials, surface level experience without digging deeper. And me talking to you and saying, hey, so you played at a few rugby teams. Let's talk about the context in which, you played at that team. Talk to me about the culture of that team, the expectations. Oh yeah, I was drinking every day, smashing beers, doing all this. And I'm sitting there like, oh gosh, do you like Vegemite? And you're like, no, I hate that. I'm like, well, we don't do beer and we do lots of Vegemite. And you're going to be like, no, well, that's not the right fit. And I'm going to be like, well, that's not the right fit. And we've made a good decision mutually.
So and we can stay friends. And when something comes along that is a good fit, there's an opportunity. And no, yeah, I love that outcome for all parties involved, because then you have a long-term employee. You have better expectations. And when that person goes to leave, which inevitably they do, there's always, they stay a good alumni because they can communicate what they want at that time in their lives, because people aren't static. The thing that excites you at a point in time, it can very much change. So I love this. And it actually ties really well to one of the questions that came from one of our listeners, which says, he often sees leaders rushing to fill a seat instead of waiting for the right fit. How do you explain discovery-led hiring to a CEO who just wants to fill a role fast?
I've had to do this a number of times. It's a challenge. I think being clear of that spectrum that we were talking about, right? I think a CEO typically is going to tackle a problem from a one-sided perspective, typically, right? And typically it's results focused, it's speed, it's execution. There's a reason why they're a CEO, because they're a visionary. They would have, a lot of them actually, especially founder CEOs, have a good amount of breadth of experience when it comes to operations as well, and operationalizing systems. So they've gotten to a point where they've built a process, a suite of systems, and they've gotten to the point where it's sitting in this hybrid CEO, COO position. So a lot of the CEOs that I've worked with at this level are very, very motivated by speed and execution and results. The way I approach it is definitely elaborating on the fact that there is a spectrum here of options. It's not, hey, we can't do it your way. We need to do discovery-led hiring. It's understood. We need to move fast. We need to make a decision here in X amount of time. However, there is this opposing tension that exists, because if we go all in right now and we forsake doing discovery and forsake quality at the expense of speed, then we open ourselves up to risk. And I think talking and translating the risk into financial terms is very useful when it comes to communicating with C-suite and CEOs, because they are results driven, they're fiscally oriented. So if you can talk around the risks that exist financially to making a bad hire, and you can list things such as costs of replacement, fairly standard things, right? Hiring costs, costs of replacement, the costs of having to retrain someone. You can also then start going into the hidden costs, which are, I would argue, are the most impactful costs of making a poor hiring decision, which are the effects that a poor hire has on the momentum of the entire company, especially if it's a small company, and the speed and cohesion of the team that person was in. Also, not to mention the fact that you've got, every company has its measure of A players and top talent that get disrupted every time something like this happens. There's a loss of confidence in the business's ability to make sound hiring decisions. And all of these things amount. And I think doing some due diligence with understanding the risks and being able to quantify them in a manner that the CEO can resonate with is very important. And then messaging in a way that's not like, we can't do that, we need to spend 2 months doing this. It's, I just want to institute some safeguards here throughout our process to preserve and mitigate risk, and to ensure that we can actually not only mitigate risk and mitigate costs, but improve and expand the return on investment from a good hire, which is multiplicative. And that's the tie into like this concept of talent density. If you hire someone that's a fit, like a true fit, and we're talking about these work drivers, like really finding someone that truly resonates from the start with exactly what you're building, what you're creating in the environment and the culture, and there's a match across the board. You're not just filling a position, you're adding synergistically to a team that lifts everyone up. It raises the bar, and it actually improves momentum and operational capacity. Everything is improved. So it's not just we're avoiding a bad hire, it's we're mitigating and avoiding those costs, but simultaneously, if we get it right, we're actually improving the entire company. And a CEO is going to ask, like, how do you do that? How do you make that happen? And that's when you also need to be prepared to ask that question, because the CEO is most definitely going to say, okay, you're advocating that we slow down. I want to know how you do that. I understand logically it makes sense, but how are you actually going to manifest that difference? And that's when you as well better be prepared to answer with at least some sort of approach in which you are enforcing and bringing that discovery to the hiring process as well.
Can you walk me through it? So, I mean, I have that exact question as a co-founder CEO. It's like, how do you operationalize this? Like from the time someone submits a resume, the time you post a job till the time you hire someone, like what are the steps?
This is where a lot of people get tripped up. And this is where we need to step back and actually put more emphasis on the front end of the process before we even post the job itself. Because a lot of recruiters and a lot of companies fixate on the already established process of recruiting, which is, you have a job description or a very rough expectation of what you need, just post it, and then let's work on our process of filtering as the first means of improving the process. When in actual fact, you actually need to work before the fact, before you've even conceived of posting a job, before you've even done the job description. As a recruiter, as a, whatever the title is, there's so many these days, someone in the business in HR, or you're a hiring manager, taking the time to understand and do the discovery for what the company needs, the capability, the jobs to be done, the tasks. Put the people in the parking lot. What I say a lot of the time will we build roles around particular people that we already have in the company and try to mirror those people and hire them. Whilst that can be good for certain indicators, it's best to completely clear the slate and really understand from an operational perspective what you actually need and build this map of what the job entails when it comes to what should they be accountable for, responsible for, what likely skill sets that they're going to have. And you build this profile out through a lot of discovery and a lot of interviewing with people in the company, and you get buy-in, and you get to a point where you also are doing the commensurate amount of discovery on the company side of things to understand all of those drivers and what you can offer as a work product. So you're building out this really clear understanding of what it is that the company offers, what it is that the team offers that they'll be a part of, the dynamics in the team, and what is the actual job itself. And once you have these components, then you start building out the hiring process. Then you start building out the collateral for how you sell and market the position, and the job description per se, and the entire experience of making it very, very polarizing from the start. So something that we do, for example, we do all that discovery. There's a process that we leverage to do that, and it takes maybe a week or two of deep discovery and interviewing to map all those things out. Then we create a deck, and we create a deck that's maybe like 10 to 15 slides that we actually send to people that apply for the role. And we send them that job map that's like 5 pages long that has absolutely everything about the role, even to the point where it's got like the metrics that they'll be measured on in terms of the success, the different levels of the role, how they can ascend in the role. It's so much information, but it's delivered in a way where it's like, cool, you signed up for this opportunity. Here it is. Here's how here's what the company is like. Here's what the role is like. Here's what the team's like you'll be joining. Here's absolutely everything you could possibly know. The vision of the company, what we're about, everything. And that is the first gate. It's someone seeing that information and being like, okay, not for me, or yes, 100% for me. And at that point, what we usually do is, if they're interested, is facilitate a discovery call. So we get on for like 15, 20 minutes. And it's a very short and sharp conversation that's paired with the work drivers exercise that I mentioned before. So that's been sent to them ahead of time. They get on a call, and the recruiter has like a short chat with them and goes through the work drivers assessment. It's an opportunity to have a back and forth and some questions. But we're doing right then is the first level of filtering, the adjustment, which is like, we're looking at what drives your work and what you hire your job to do for you. And we're just going to make sure that that marries up with what we can provide. If there's a good match and we talk through some of the inconsistencies and some of the gaps, then that's when we go on to the next stage, which is a combination of longer interviewing, human-led, and simulation. So simulating the role and the context and the day-to-day, the life of, as realistically as possible, which is actually pretty hard to do remotely. And from there, we're doing all of this stuff before we've even put a candidate in front of a client. And how that translates inside a business, a hiring team would be doing all these things before they even put a candidate in front of the manager, the person in which you're placing that individual, the team, the leader of the team. So by the time they're looking at these candidates, they're like, oh my gosh, they've got the work drivers assessment, they've got the discovery call, all the information that we've discovered and uncovered on potential risk, potential gaps, potential fit areas. They've done a simulation assessment that's been graded. So the hiring manager's got all this, oriented to all this information, this data that's agnostic of bias, because it's just data. And the hiring manager can look at all these data points, and we help them craft their interviewing experience. And then we facilitate another human-to-human conversation. What you'll notice is that AI in that system and that process is a supporting effort. It's an augmentation of the process. It is not putting AI out in front doing the things, because that's not the way to be doing it, because it's a very human-led endeavor. So we aim to really put the humans at the forefront, which is more resource intensive. And that's part of the challenge, is that we've institutionalized this orientation towards hiring should be done cheap, it should be done fast. And with this paradigm shift, it actually needs to be done in a manner that's more expensive, more resource intensive, and takes longer. And that's the challenge to the status quo is that in order to do this, you need to make sacrifice as a company.
And you got to start measuring the financial impact of the entire candidate journey or the entire employee journey. Because if you start looking at it as just the cost of, hiring or recruitment, and you don't look at like the cost of replacement, retention, and outcomes, obviously it starts to look like you're spending too much money. But if you start looking at it long term and you start to see the results of these people that you're hiring in this way, I mean, you can justify that time, that time and effort, those resources pretty easily.
It's hard to justify, and it's tying to that question around how do you convince a CEO. CEOs are typically, like I mentioned, oriented towards short-term results. Like, what's the least path of friction and what's the shortest path through revenue-generating activities? What I've just outlined is the long way around to a revenue-generating activity, right? If you see HR as a cost center, then I pitch you on what I just talked about, you're going to be like, you're smoking something crazy. Like, you need to just stop what you're saying and follow the playbook, right? So a lot of this is predicated on having leadership that buy into and believe that people are the unlock to performance, and people are the unlock to better client service delivery. And if you believe as a CEO and as a leadership team in the fact that we operate in multi-sided businesses, all of us, you have the employee or the employees, the contractors, the humans doing the work. You have the stakeholders, the shareholders, the company, the owners, and then you have the customers. And if any one of those fail or don't uphold their expectations in this triad of relationships, then it all breaks. And a lot of businesses, companies, CEOs don't pay enough homage to how important the relationship is with the people to the client and the business to the client. And what I'm challenging here is directly the fact that if people are inherently one of the most important things in that triad, because they're usually 60 to 70% of a company's expenses. It's ridiculous. And you wonder why we don't treat it with the same rigor that we do with the other stakeholder, which is the client. But if the businesses are not paying enough homage to that base that provides all the results and drives all the work, then you're capping your ability as a business to expand, to grow, to achieve your vision. And hiring the right way the first time at this level, with this level of due diligence, is one of the best ways to shore up talent density and to have a good base of employees.
Josh, that was awesome. And I want to chat about this all day, but we are out of time. And for the viewers here, if that didn't make you want to light your hiring playbook on fire, I don't know what will. Josh, thanks for coming. And to you viewers, if this episode gave you something to think about, sign up for our free insight drop. The link is in the show notes, or check out certain.co/podcast. That's certn.co/podcast. Josh, thanks for joining us. This was a ton of fun.
Thanks for having me.